Hello everyone, this is Margarita with CityGal Papeterie. Thank you for joining me today. I wanted to continue working in this envelope junk journal that I created in one of my last videos. I will post a link above. I'm going to work on page 1. I have my supplies here, my blender, my Distress ink, antique linen, and my Hero Arts black ink pad as well. I've been using these since I started the book. This is some raw sienna acrylic paint just in case I want to use it. I have a bunch of dyes that I found in my stash that are floral themed to kind of keep with the same idea I had on the cover. Here are some scraps that I used on the cover, or rather some scraps that were left over from the cover, some scrap pieces of fabric. I have some old book pages, and then I have these little portraits that I'm going to be including in my book. I made them using that black pen, some color pencils, and a white gel pen. So I'm gonna start with just choosing the little portrait that I want. These portraits were inspired by Dina Wakley. You should check out her demos if anyone's interested in seeing how she creates these. They're really cute and super easy. And now I'm picking out a piece of scrap fabric to put onto my little portrait to look like a shirt or blouse. I decide I want this like dark blue and white floral pattern. I grab a piece of chalk and now I'm just slightly marking where I'm gonna cut my fabric so that it lays over my image where I want it to be, and I'll cut it properly. So I'm just making the shape of her shoulders there, where the bottom of the fabric should be cut. And then I'll just cut it out along the chalk line. And you can probably imagine at this point that I'm going to be collaging. Once I finish cutting my little piece of fabric, I place it over. I try to get rid of some of the chalk marks just so that it's not too visible. You could also add some stitching to this just so it looks more like an actual, blouse, but I don't do that. Now I fold it over and I'm going to cut at an angle on the neck portion of my little piece of fabric so that it looks more like a collar. And now with my hot glue gun, I'm going to adhere it onto my little portrait. Once that is done, I'm going to try and figure out what I'm going to do with my background. This is my little portrait there. I'm really happy with how it's looking. I cut a piece off the top so that I have more room to look at my background, to put stuff back there. I'm gonna tear one of these book pages down to size so that it fits behind my portrait and it will become part of my background. This paper is really old, so it's pretty fragile. It tears very easily, and once I know where I want it to be, yeah, and I make sure that it's at the right size that I want. I then grab my blender, my blending tool, and I darken up the edges. I don't even add ink. I'm just using whatever ink is on the pad. And because this paper is so fragile, I can't hold it while I ink up the edges. I have to actually lay it down. Otherwise, I'm gonna tear the page. So here I'm just darkening up all the edges. It'll give it a nice contrast against the background of the envelope that is, part of the book, or the junk journal, I should say. Now I'm adding a little bit of ink just because I don't have enough on the blending pad. And then I also ink up the edges of my little portrait. And like I said, these are inspired by Dina Wakley. I feel like I practiced some of these types of line drawings back when I was like doing art school, but I never really got into it. And I recently saw one of her demos and was like re-inspired to try them out, and they were so much fun to make. So I drew a bunch of them and I wanted to include them in this journal. Now that my edges are all inked up, I can continue working on the background of this page. So here I'm just trying to figure out placement. I grabbed that dusty pink piece of handmade paper. That is a handmade paper. I love that color, by the way. It's one of my favorite colors. And I think it looks great on this background. And then to add a little bit more feminine touch, I grab a piece of lace to place at the bottom of my background. And once I'm ready, I just start adhering everything down. I'm using fabric glue. That's a really old bottle of glue. It still works. It's still good. There's still some in there. So that's what I'm using to glue all of my elements down to my page. And even though these are envelope pages, just because they have pockets, I'm not necessarily going to use all of the pockets. I mean, there isn't much I want to put in there. The purpose of the junk journal itself is just to, to add stuff onto the pages. You could obviously use the envelopes as pockets if that's what you wanted to do, and I might use some of them in that way, but I'm probably gonna do what I am doing here on most of the pages and not use them as pockets. I'm now adding some of that adhesive so that I can glue down my lace. Such pretty lace. And then whatever glue is left on my finger, because there was a huge glob on my page, so I just spread it out with my finger, I'm gonna just put that onto the portrait so I can glue that down. Add a little bit more. I can definitely get really messy when I'm crafting. And then I found this little bunch, this die that's a little flower bunch, and I'm gonna darken up the edges just because I don't want to see the white of the paper along the sides of the die cut. And I'm gonna put this as her hair. I'm gonna use this as her like a headpiece. I love how this turns out. I use a hot glue gun to glue this down, and then it just fits perfectly right at the top of the portrait, and I just love that so much. Now I have this other little piece of what do you call it? It's like little weaving piece of rubber that I had used on the cover, and I want to glue it down, but I can't put the glue right on the weave because obviously it's gonna go right through the holes. So I just put my glue on a piece of scratch paper, and then I'm kind of dipping the piece on there so that I can get glue on the back. And honestly, that's it for this page. I do add some wording. I have this piece of paper that I printed different phrases and words onto just on my computer. And then I add this onto there. I put a little brad just for detail. And then I glue that down using my hot glue gun. But that's the whole page. That's how I complete it. You know, it just took a few things just to make this page. I didn't use a whole lot of stuff, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I hope you guys are able to craft with me and maybe give this idea a try. Definitely check out Dina Wakely's video so you can see how she makes these little portraits. They're a lot of fun to make and really, really easy and totally forgivable if you make any mistakes. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos, please subscribe. And I hope you enjoyed this. See you next time.